Hey guys, tonight, we're tiptoeing through creaking corridors, past moonlit stones and damp silence, to uncover 11 chilling riddles, left behind by the Middle Ages. You think you know all the medieval tales, right? Dungeons, dragons, kings, and plagues. But those are the loud stories, the dramatic ones, the easy ones, the real mysteries they whisper. They hide in the dark, in the empty spaces, in the disappearances no one ever solved, the kind of riddles that don't sleep, even after centuries. Now picture this, a single torch, flickering against the stone walls of the Tower of London, shadows stretching long across the floor. You feel it, a presence, just behind you. You turn, nothing, and yet something lingers, because here you're not alone. The story begins in the year 1483. Two boys, Edward V and his younger brother Richard, Duke of York. They were sons of a king, royal blood in their veins. Their father Edward IV had just died. By right, the crown should have gone to Edward, age 12, but history rarely follows the rules. A storm was brewing, a royal power struggle, thick with betrayal. Their uncle Richard, Duke of Gloucester, claimed he was protecting them, that the tower was for their safety. That's the official story. Days passed, then weeks, then silence, no letters, no sightings, no one came or went, and the boys, they were never seen again. It's a story that doesn't scream. It whispers, it lingers, it settles in your bones. So, before we go deeper, take a second to like this video. Subscribe only if this kind of storytelling is your thing. And if you're listening right now, lights low, tell me where are you tuning in from? And what time is it there? Because I want to know who else is awake with me. Right now. Now then, close the blinds, turn off the big lights, crack a window, let the breeze and the mystery slip in. Let's begin. The tower is quiet tonight, but if you stand very still, you might hear something. A footstep that doesn't belong to you, or soft laughter that doesn't echo right. Edward and Richard, two royal children, suddenly turned into pawns, because in June of that same year, Richard, their uncle, declared Edward's birth illegitimate. He took the throne, crowned himself Richard III. Some say he had no choice. Others say he saw an opportunity and seized it. But the princes, they vanished, and the silence left behind, it still echoes through history. Now fast forward. Almost 200 years later, 1674, workmen renovating the tower found something beneath a staircase in the White Tower. Two skeletons, small bones, children's bones. The remains were declared to be Edward and Richard. King Charles II had them reburied in Westminster Abbey with full honors. Mystery solved, not exactly. The bones were never examined with modern science. No DNA, no definitive proof, just assumption. And to some historians, it all feels a bit too tidy, too convenient. People still petition to this day to test the bones. But the royal family, they've never allowed it. Maybe they're protecting the dead. Or maybe they're protecting a truth better left buried. Now here's where things get stranger. Some believe the princes never died, that loyalists smuggled them out of the tower. One theory claims Edward V lived quietly as a bricklayer in Devon. Another that Perkin Warbeck, a man executed in 1499 for pretending to be Richard, wasn't pretending at all, that he was the younger prince, returned from exile, trying to reclaim the throne. And what about Richard III? Was he a murderer or a scapegoat? The Tudors who followed him had every reason to paint him as a monster, a hunchbacked villain, stained in royal blood. It made their rule look righteous, but others say Richard was innocent, that someone else killed the boys. Maybe the Duke of Buckingham, another ambitious man with royal ties. Or maybe no one killed them. Maybe they were neglected, forgotten, left alone in that cold tower, hungry, hopeless. In the deepest parts of the tower, some say you can still hear it. Children's laughter, soft, distant, or the patter of slippered feet, scurrying over cold stones. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than screams. There's even a fringe theory that the princes never existed at all, that they were invented by Tudor historians to vilify Richard, It sounds wild, but this is bedtime history, and we don't throw out the strange just because it makes us uncomfortable. Now walk further, past rusted iron bars, past the traitor's gate, through centuries of secrets. Here's something that surprises most people. During World War II, the tower was used as a prison again, and one of the prisoners, Rudolf Hess, Hitler's deputy, the tower doesn't forget. Centuries folding in on each other, like pages in a cursed book. One story layered over the next. You sit down now, on a stone bench, the kind a prince might have once sat on. Legs swinging, eyes wide, still hoping to go home. Maybe they whispered to each other about sword fights and feasts and parents. Maybe they just wondered why no one was coming. Richard III only ruled for 2 years. He died at Bosworth Field, his body left in the mud, sword in his back. His final words, lost. And with his death, the Tudors rose. Was it fate? Was it betrayal? Or just another chapter in a never-ending power game? You lean back, against the tower wall. It's damp, rough, not haunted exactly, but full, heavy, thick with memory, like it holds every whisper, every secret, every last breath. And maybe that's where the boys still are, not in ghost stories, but in that cold twist of your stomach when the air suddenly shifts, when you hear a step behind you, but no one's there, when the silence feels too still. Maybe they're here, not in spirit, but in story, waiting, watching, wondering if someone will ever truly know what happened to them. And as the wind curls along the corridor, brushing your sleeve, you ask yourself one final question. Do these stones remember who buried those boys? Or are they just waiting for someone brave enough to ask the right question, waiting for the next mystery to unfold? Snow bites at your cheeks as you climb higher into the Alps. The wind curls through the pine trees, not like weather, more like whispering, soft, mournful, almost human. Each gust carries something ancient, as if the mountain is sighing in its sleep, or maybe warning you to turn back. You feel it underfoot. The ground remembers things here, more than it should. Your boots sink too deeply into the snow, like stepping into footprints, already made by someone who walked this path long ago, someone who never came back, because this mountain has a secret left behind in the year 1809. During the heart of the Napoleonic Wars, an entire French regiment disappeared, gone, without a trace. No bodies, no blood, no battlefield retreat, just silence. 1,000 men who marched into the white and were never seen again. You glance over your shoulder, half expecting to see them. Ghostly shapes, moving in formation, blue coats faded, eyes hollow, but there's nothing, only snow and the sound of your breath. Louder now, in the hush. The story begins with Napoleon's campaign into the Tyrol, a rugged frontier ruled by rebellion. Austrian guerrilla fighters knew this land intimately, generationally. It was no place for error. The French army, desperate to crush resistance, stretched its forces across the ridges, thin and treacherous. One regiment was ordered to make a routine crossing through a narrow alpine pass. They never made it through. No final letter, no battlefield report, no record of ambush. Their orders were clear, their route documented. But after a certain point, nothing. They vanished. And for 200 years, historians have argued why. The obvious answer, the weather. A blizzard maybe. A hidden crevasse. An avalanche. Or perhaps something darker. Some say the soldiers were ambushed, sabotaged, lured into traps by locals. Who knew how to turn the snow itself into a weapon? But then, there are other theories. The stranger ones. The first that they fell into a glacier. A company swallowed whole, frozen in time, like flies caught in crystal. But glaciers have receded. Ice has melted. Terrain once locked in blue has been exposed. And yet, no bones, no buttons, no muskets, nothing. Then comes the darker tale. One passed down by Tyrolean farmers whose ancestors lived through the French occupation. They say the soldiers were lured, led off the path into a narrow gully. There, the locals triggered an avalanche, buried them beneath tons of snow. 1,000 men, entombed in silence, the perfect revenge. Some say if you stand on those slopes, after sundown, you can still hear it, screaming, muffled, beneath the frost. And then, there's the unsettling version, the fringe tale, the one only whispered, late at night, after the schnapps, after the fires burned low. They say, the regiment found something they shouldn't have, a cave, deep in the belly of the mountain, older than memory, older than man. They entered, and never came out. One man, a shepherd, claimed to find scraps of blue cloth high on a ridge, wedged under black rock that hadn't been there before. He reached out, touched it. The fabric turned to frost, right beneath his fingers. He vanished, that same winter. Gone, just like them. No report, no mention. And Napoleon, obsessed with power, with image, with history, never spoke of it. He documented many defeats in his later years, but not this, not one word, as if it never happened, or as if it was something he didn't want the world to know. You walk farther now, into the snow. The land becomes unfamiliar. The trees bend beneath a weight they shouldn't be able to bear. The mist moves oddly, too fast, too purposeful. Your breath hangs in the air, a ghost of itself, curling like smoke. And the silence, it presses down, like a heavy blanket, intentional, watching. There's a poem written by a 19th century Alpine poet. He spoke of a wind-borne battalion that marched into the white mouth of heaven and was swallowed whole. A metaphor or a memory, one too strange for textbooks. Even during the First World War, Austrian soldiers stationed here reported hearing it. Drums, marching, footsteps in the snow, but no drummers. They called it der Marsch der Verschwundenen, the March of the Vanished. Skeptics say snow blindness, fatigue, echoes of your own heartbeat. But if you stood on that slope at midnight, would you say the same? You pause, boots crunching, the mist shifts, revealing a ridge not on your map. You don't remember seeing it before. You call out, but your voice vanishes. Only the wind replies, curling around you like an old coat. And you feel it again, that presence, not threatening, not curious, just there. And then you remember a quiet tradition, still practiced by some old mountain folk. Every few winters they leave out offerings, bread, wine, not for animals, not for travelers, for the hungry men, they say. They don't explain, they don't stay, they just place the offerings, nod once to the snow, and leave before dark. When asked why, they only smile. Just old habits, they say, but their eyes tell another story. Today satellites map the Alps. In exquisite detail, archaeologists find traces of other wars, boots, buckles, bones, but of the missing regiment, not a single trace. And that's what lingers. 1,000 men can't vanish without a sound, without a storm, without leaving something behind. Unless they walked into something that took everything. You stop, sit on a cold, smooth stone. Snow falls in heavy sheets, the sky above steel grey. There's a sound on the wind now. Rhythmic, distant, too steady to ignore. Like boots, marching. You close your eyes. It could be your pulse, your heartbeat, your mind. But still, it marches. And deep inside, something stirs. What if the mountain remembers? What if it isn't done? What if, after all this time, the regiment is still marching? Just not in our world. You open your eyes. Snow fills the path behind you. Ahead, only white. And the sound, still there. The march of the vanished. And you wonder, if you stand here long enough, will they invite you to join them? The waves lap, softly, against the timbers of your small wooden boat as you drift slowly across the cold, brooding surface of the North Sea. Fog curls, like breath from something ancient. It slides over black water like a hand brushing silk. Every creak of your boat feels too loud, too alive. Out here beneath this endless grey sky, the world feels suspended in time. There is no horizon, no sun, only the hush of sea and sky blending into one, as if time itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to return. And then, you see it, a ship, massive, wooden, drifting across your path, like a memory. Its sails are slack, its flag hangs limp, colors faded, but unmistakably Dutch. There is no crew, no birds, no gull cries, no sound, just the ghost of a vessel. You found a Zoetdorp, or perhaps just its shadow. The Zoetdorp was once real, a ship of the Dutch East India Company. Launched in 1712, she set sail from the Netherlands bound for Batavia, modern-day Jakarta, her hold filled with silver, thousands upon thousands of coins, enough to fund armies, to build kingdoms, to tempt fate. But somewhere, along the wild western coast of Australia, the Zoetdorp vanished. No survivors, no wreckage, no signal, only silence. And for more than 2 centuries, her fate was unknown, until whispers began to surface. Among the Aboriginal Nanda people, legends were told of pale-skinned strangers, sick and weak, arriving in a great wooden vessel from the sea. Some died, some stayed, and some may have become part of the land itself, part of its people, its memory. In 1927, everything changed. A lone historian wandering the cliffs found something glinting in the sand. Coins, silver coins, worn by time but still Dutch, still real, dated to the early 1700s. That moment sparked a decades-long search. Divers came, explorers, treasure hunters. They combed the cliffs, now called the Zoetdorp Cliffs. What they found: fragments, splintered hull, metal fastenings, crushed crates, and silver coins, scattered like broken dreams across the seabed. But something felt wrong. There were almost no human remains. A ship with over 200 souls aboard. And yet, no skeletons, no personal items, only a few scattered bones. Too few, far too few. And that's where the mystery deepens. What happened to the rest? Some scholars point to the sea, to currents, to scavengers, but others believe some of the crew survived. They made it ashore, weak, injured, desperate, and they met the Nanda. Oral traditions speak of helping strangers, of thunder, of illness, of strange tools, and children born with light eyes, high-bridged noses, hair like sand. In the 20th century, anthropologists took note. Some Aboriginal communities near the cliffs showed unusual traits: lighter eye color, uncommon bone structure, and resistance to diseases like smallpox. Traits that shouldn't have been there. Coincidence or legacy. You step onto shore now, your boots crunch across the shells, twisted driftwood cracks beneath your feet, the air smells like salt, and ghosts, half buried in the sand. You spot a piece of timber grey and splintered. You kneel, touch it gently. It feels soft, old, like it remembers, like it's waiting. And then there's the silver. Thousands of coins recovered over the years, but many more still missing. Some believe survivors carried them inland, to trade or to hide. Coins have surfaced in strange places, far from the coast, far from any known wreck. There's one story of a cave, hidden in the cliffs, not far from the crash site. Locals say a ship ghost guards it. That treasure lies within, and those who enter, alone, never come out. The cave exists, the legend remains, but no one has ever mapped it. You glance toward the cliffs. They rise sharp and unforgiving, beautiful. In that way, deserts, and bones, and shipwrecks sometimes are. Few people come here. Fewer stay overnight. The waves slam into the rocks below. White spray erupts like smoke, and you can almost see it now. A ship, splitting apart. Men screaming, climbing, crawling for shore, only to find a wilderness more brutal than the sea. Some claim they've seen them. Silhouettes, standing at the edge of the tide, watching, waiting. For what the Zoetdorp is real. The wreck has been found, and yet, its story remains spectral. Because we know it existed, we've seen the evidence, and still, we don't know what came next. Did survivors live quietly among the Nhanda? Did they vanish into the desert? Or did they find something out there? Something that should have stayed buried? You lie back now, in your boat, letting the motion rock you. The fog curls again, closer this time, like it knows you. And somewhere beneath the waves, wood groans. Or maybe that's just your imagination. Still, if the Zoodorp watches from the deep, what does it see? Coins falling, names fading, stories forgotten. Or maybe, just maybe, it sees faces, still waiting on the cliffs, still hoping for a ship that will never return. The night presses close as you step cautiously through the crumbling ruins of an ancient Scottish castle. Wind hisses across the moors, brushing through broken arches like breath through cracked teeth. The castle rises from the earth, stone bones jagged and solemn against the darkening sky, silent witnesses to centuries of secrets. Ivy clings to the walls, your fingers touch cold stone, rain and time seep into your skin, and then you hear it, a whisper, so faint it could be the wind, or memory, but it's not. It's feminine, low, beckoning. You've just stepped into the legend of the Green Lady of Fyvie Castle. Fyvie Castle sits tucked in the hills of Aberdeenshire, a place both haunting and beautiful. Its roots reach back to the 13th century, built by clans of power, the Prestons, the Meldrums, the Seatons. Each left their mark, and maybe a shadow, because Fyvie is more than a fortress. It's a vessel of loss, of silence, and of one spirit who refuses to fade. They call her the Green Lady, but this isn't just another ghost tale. She wasn't a lady in waiting who slipped from a tower. She wasn't a noble who died too young. No, this story is older, sharper, more unsettling. It begins in 1920. Renovations were underway in one of the older wings. A crew broke through a wall and found what was never meant to be found. A chamber, sealed, narrow, dark. Inside a skeleton, female, curled into herself, knees to chest, arms wrapped tightly, like she was protecting something. Or like she died, afraid. No name, no marker, no clue, just brittle bones, dry as sorrow, heavy with silence. And from the moment she was moved, something changed. Rooms turned cold, even in summer. Fires refused to stay lit. Paintings crashed from the walls. Lights flickered in rooms with no electricity. Visitors felt eyes watching them. Attempts to relocate the remains always failed. Fires erupted near the wagons. The bones crumbled to powder faster than nature allowed, as if resisting. Eventually, the remains were returned to the wall. And the disturbances, they stopped, mostly. Historians argue over who she was. Some say a plague victim bricked in to stop the spread. Others whisper of sacrifice, a ritual to protect the castle from invasion. But the darkest tale speaks of a jealous nobleman who locked his wife in the wall. Alive, no trial, no burial, just silence. And still her spirit walks. She is seen on the grand staircase, a green gown trailing behind her, glowing faintly. Her face rarely visible, only a blur, an expression, sadness without shape. She pauses always at one second-floor window, looking out over what was once an orchard, now long gone, overgrown with grass and memory. Still, she waits, searching for someone, or someone, who never returned. When she appears, something always follows. Castle lore says every sighting of the Green Lady precedes a death. Never immediately, but always, soon. A sigh, a chill, then a letter, a call, bad news, delivered with uncanny timing. Believe in omens or not, the pattern is hard to ignore. Skeptics of course dismiss it. Drafts, they say, loose timbers, old wires. But employees have quit without warning. One gardener ran after seeing her glide through the hedgerows. He never came back, not even for his pay. And then, there are the stones. Before the Green Lady Fyvie Castle was said to be cursed, a wandering seer warned them. 3 sacred stones, taken from a holy site, had been used in the castle's foundation. The theft came with a price. No Lord of Fyvie would ever bear a direct male heir until the stones were returned. And, strangely enough, no family line ever passed cleanly from father to son. Sons died, titles passed sideways, to cousins, to strangers. 2 of the stones have been found, one in a river, one in a wall, but the third still missing, and some believe the Green Lady guards it forever. You walk now through the great hall, tapestries hang like eyes, watching, listening. A chill slides across the floorboards. From above, a faint sound, metal brushing stone. You tell yourself it's nothing, but the silence that follows is thick and heavy. Psychics have come here, some quietly, others on camera. Most report the same thing, a female presence, restless. One medium traced a symbol in the dust on the chamber wall. This, she whispered, was a binding mark to trap what couldn't die, and the symbol it was drawn from the inside. So who was she? A woman betrayed, a spirit imprisoned, a keeper of something older than truth or something darker. You sit now on a stone bench beneath the grand stair. Moonlight spills through stained glass, turning the air to drifting sparks. The silence folds in, tight, intimate, and then a whisper, close, too soft to understand, too clear to ignore. You don't turn, you don't need to. She isn't waiting to be seen. She's waiting to be remembered. Maybe she's waiting for justice. The mist is heavy tonight. It curls low over the English countryside, like an old breath, warm, damp, long exhaled by something ancient. You walk slowly, boots pressing into the soft, rain-fed earth. Each step heavy, measured. The moon hangs low, pale and blurred, veiled behind drifting fog. It casts shadows that shift as though watching you. There's something buried out here, not just in the soil, but in time. Ahead of you, a mound rises, lonely, perfectly round, brimming with silence, but not an ordinary silence. This one listens. It pulls your gaze, like a whisper behind the ear, even though no voice is heard. You've arrived at the Uffington White Horse landscape. But this isn't about the chalk figure on the hillside. It's about what lies beneath the grass, beneath the hill, beneath the centuries. Just below the White Horse sits Dragon Hill, a strange flat-topped rise that looks too deliberate to be natural. Local legend claims it's where St. George fought and killed his dragon. They say the patch of grass that won't grow on its summit marks the place where dragon's blood soaked the earth. A clean tale, a Christian tale. But the land, it whispers older names, older stories, ones that stretch back before St. George, before written history. Beneath your feet lies the Uffington Burial Mound, an ancient grave, but whose excavations in the 19th and 20th centuries found signs, burned bones, pottery shards, charcoal. One skeleton, likely female, mixed with ash and soil. Sparse. No gold, no weapons, no jewelry, no grand tomb. And yet, the mound is massive. Its placement deliberate. Sacred, some say. Feared, say others. Because the people returned here, again and again, for generations, not just to bury, but to guard. And then, there's the figure above, the Uffington White Horse, a strange abstract creature etched into the hillside, made of chalk, made to last. But it doesn't look like a horse, not really. Its body is long and coiled, neck stretched, limbs lean and curved, more serpent than stallion. Some say it's a dragon. Others say a sun symbol, a celestial beast. Dating shows it was carved around 1000 BCE. That's over 3,000 years ago. Before Rome, before Britain, before most of the myths we cling to now. But why carve something so vast, only visible from above? Some believe it was a marker, a warning, a claim. Others say it was ritual, linked to the solstice or the stars. Still others believe the figure and the mound are connected, that whatever lies beneath was not ordinary, someone legendary, or something not entirely human. Here's where things begin to twist. Centuries after the burial, the mound was opened, not to loot, there was nothing to steal, but as if to check, to confirm that whatever was buried was still there. Why disturb the dead? Unless you're afraid they won't stay that way. Fringe theories suggest a warlord lies below, or a giant, a ruler of this valley, whose story bent with time into the tales of Arthur, or dragons, or serpent kings. Some claim this whole site is a celestial anchor. One point. In an ancient sky temple network, built by a people we no longer remember, but the land it remembers. In the 1970s, a group of schoolchildren on a field trip reported seeing lights, glowing orbs, pale green, silent, floating above the white horse. They hovered, then disappeared into the fog. Authorities dismissed it. Weather balloons, reflections, static. But one boy, now a grandfather, still says, it wasn't of this world. Then there's the scouring. Every 7 years, locals gather to maintain the white horse. They bring tools, fresh chalk. They scrub the lines, trim the weeds, redraw the figure. They call it scouring the horse. No one remembers why, only that it must be done. In the 1930s, during one of these scourings, something strange happened. An amateur historian struck something beneath the chalk. It was metallic, hollow. He called others. But when they returned, it was gone. No dent, no sign, just smooth chalk, as if the hill had healed. Some whisper. The figure isn't just a symbol, it's a seal, a lid, a containment, not of a person, but of a presence, or a relic. Local folklore adds more threads. Some say a cursed blade lies beneath, forged in blood. Others speak of a star fragment, or a celestial traveler who came down in flame, and never left. Even today, people leave offerings at the hill's base, carved wood, braided charms, polished stones. They don't say why, they just say it's tradition. Now, you stand at the summit. The wind is constant here. It presses against your coat like a question. The sky clears. Moonlight spills over the curve of chalk. From this height, the figure doesn't look like a horse. It looks like a message, written in a language not meant for us. There's no plaque, no map, no warning, only silence, only stars, and you. You wonder, did the Bronze Age people stand here too? Did they pray? Did they wait? Did they fear what they buried or worship it? Maybe they knew something we've forgotten. Or maybe they're still here, still watching, still waiting to be remembered. You walk now beneath the tall crooked trees of a forgotten forest. Branches twist overhead like the fingers of old gods, heavy with moss and memory. The path narrows, your boots sink into the soft spongy ground. The night air grows colder. Above, the moon tries to pierce the canopy, but only the thinnest silver threads reach the forest floor. There's a hush here. Not just quiet, but something waiting. Somewhere ahead, tucked between the gentle hills of Oxfordshire and Warwickshire, lies a place you won't find on postcards. It doesn't draw the crowds like Stonehenge or Avebury, but it is older, stranger, and entirely unsolved. This is the riddle of the Rollright Stones. The site isn't just one monument, it's three, scattered across quiet fields, split by hedgerows and ancient paths. 3 names, 3 forms, 3 silences. They are called the King's Men, the Whispering Knights, and the King's Stone. Together they form one of England's most haunting prehistoric mysteries. You begin with the King's Men, a circle, 77 standing stones, lichen-covered, rough-edged, worn by thousands of years of rain, wind, and time. They don't stand in perfect lines. They aren't polished or grand. Instead, they look like people, ancient figures, hunched together, leaning in, listening, conspiring, each one frozen in the middle of a conversation no one remembers. Legend says they were people, a king, and his army, turned to stone by a witch. The tale goes like this. A proud king marched across the countryside, intent on conquering England. As he neared Long Compton, a witch stepped out from the hedge and blocked his way. She gave him a challenge. 7 long strides shalt thou take, and if Long Compton thou canst see, King of England thou shalt be. The king laughed, took 7 bold steps, but as he reached the crest, a mound rose before him. He could not see the village. He failed, and with a snap of the witch's fingers, he turned to stone. His army turned to stone, frozen forever in the moment before victory. Now they stand, eternal, still, and on certain windy nights, some say, you can hear them whisper, not words, not language, just the murmur of something very, very old. Not far from them, down a gentle slope, stand the whispering knights, 5 tall stones, leaning inward, not by accident. They tilt like people huddled in secret, heads bowed, voices low, older than the circle, much older. Archaeologists say they may be part of a Neolithic tomb, a burial chamber from around 3800 BCE, but something doesn't fit. Their shape, their layout, it's off, too unnatural, too personal. Local legend says they were traitors, knights who conspired against their king, caught whispering and cursed before the others. If you press your ear to the stone at midnight, villagers say you might hear them, not words, not stories, just voices, soft, far away, like echoes, from a place you've never been. And then, there is the King's Stone, alone, across the road, perched in an open field, a tall narrow spike of stone, pitted, weathered. Its surface feels like old bone. It leans slightly east as if it wants to fall, or point, to something, unseen. No one knows why it stands alone. Some say it marked a Bronze Age grave, a chief, a warrior. Others call it a boundary marker, a stake at the edge of a vanished kingdom. But others believe this is the king, turned to stone, separated from his men by magic, by fate, or by failure. Ground-penetrating radar has found strange patterns nearby. Voids, pits, unexplained structures beneath the soil. Collapsed chambers maybe, or something else. But no one digs. The site is protected, and more curiously, locals discourage it. They tell stories of things that happen when the stones are disturbed. One farmer, in the 1800s, tried to move a king's manstone to clear his field. His animals died, his crops failed, his family left. He abandoned the land, never came back. Coincidence maybe, but no one else has tried since. And then there's the vicar, a traveling clergyman in 1870. He walked into the circle one fog-heavy morning. Witnesses watched him go in. He never came out. When the mist cleared, only his cane remained, leaning against a stone. No body, no trace, no reason. He vanished, like the stories say people sometimes do. Now, you sit at the edge of the circle. The king's men surround you. Moonlight casts silver across the stones. The air is still. Your breath drifts like smoke. Far away, a bird calls once, then silence. The stones are quiet too, but they feel present. Not angry, not kind, just aware, watching. You wonder, what are they really? Burial markers, astronomical guides? Or were they truly once an army, halted by something older and stronger than ambition? Who was the witch? A woman, a priestess, a force, or just time itself, relentless, patient, unmoved? The roll-right stones don't answer. They've stood longer than most languages, longer than most gods. They don't need to explain themselves. They've already outlasted the questions. The wind sharpens as you drift north. It cuts along your collar like a warning. The land breathes slowly here. Ancient rhythms, rising and falling across the moorland, as if time itself carved the hills. Shadows stretch over the heather long, and hushed, even the birds grow quiet, as if they know better than to break the silence. You walk on, no sound but the muffled press of your boots against peat-rich earth. Then, you see it, rising from the ground on a lonely patch of land just outside Forres a Stone, black against the fading sky, cold, imposing, forgotten, but not asleep. This is Swenos Stone. At nearly 21 feet tall, it is the tallest surviving carved stone in Scotland. And yet, for all its size, no one really knows why it's here, or or what it means. 4 sides, all carved in low relief, weathered by centuries, but still visible. You reach out, fingers brushing sandstone. You feel the carving's warriors locked in mid-strike, swords raised, horses galloping, rows of heads, decapitated, neatly arranged, a tall cross, and on one side a tree, twisted, bare. But there are no names, no dates, no inscription, just images, layered, relentless. It feels less like art and more like a warning. Scholars place it in the 9th or 10th century, late Pictish, just before the Picts and Scots became one people. But what is this stone recording? A victory, a curse, or something else entirely? One theory says it marks a Pictish victory over Viking invaders, and indeed some figures wear what resemble Viking helmets. The battle is organized, almost ceremonial, not chaos but process, even the heads, lined up like inventory. Another theory connects it to Kenneth MacAlpin, the man who united the Picts and Scots. Maybe this stone was raised to mark that turning point. But if so, why no mention of Kenneth no King's name? No royal symbol, nothing. That's where the certainty begins to unravel, because this stone says everything and nothing at once. Some believe it was never meant to be read, only felt. A spiritual artifact, a visual spell, not for history but for power, a binding, a charm, a protection. And some go further. There's a theory that Sueños stone isn't a monument, but a warning, a seal, a barrier over something not buried, but bound. Why else so many heads? Why the tree? Why a man small compared to the rest, hanging upside down? Some say that tree is Yggdrasil, the world tree from Norse myth, a nod to Odin who hung himself to gain knowledge. Others call it a Pictish death symbol, something once known but now lost. The imagery is tangled. Christian crosses beside pagan spirals, Celtic curves beside Norse lines. It's a blend of belief, of cultures clashing or converging. Even the name Sueños stone is likely a mistake. It comes from a 16th century historian who linked the stone to Sweyn Forkbeard, the Danish king. But there's no record Sweyn ever came this far north, and no reason he'd raise a monument here. Maybe the name doesn't matter. Maybe what matters is what the stone has seen. In the 1700s, a farmer tried to move it, wanted to use it for a wall or a barn. Within days, 3 of his cows dropped dead. His youngest daughter wandered into the woods. She returned the next morning, silent, eyes wide, unable to speak. Then his house caught fire. He left and never came back. Coincidence maybe, but no one's touched the stone since. You walk around it now, slowly. The carvings on the western side are the darkest. More heads, more calm execution. And again, the tree. At its root, a figure hanging. There is power here, even if no one agrees what kind. And then you hear something else. Sueños stone aligns, in a perfect line, with 2 other landmarks, Cluny Hill and Nelson's Tower. No one knows if it's coincidence, but those who believe in ley lines say this land hums. Ancient people could feel it. And monuments like this were anchors, channels, warnings. So what is Sueños stone? A portal, a prison, or just a gravestone? You sit at the base, you don't touch it. The air is different here. The wind folds, curves, presses strangely. Every gust feels like a sigh, almost speech, but not quite. And even now, people leave offerings, bits of cloth, coins, small carvings, no signs, no instructions, just tradition, as if the land still remembers something we've forgotten. You look up, the stone towers, etched with battle and blood, and something beyond both. For all our science, for all our stories, we still don't know, and maybe we're not supposed to. Some things aren't meant to be solved, only remembered, only felt, feared, just a little, because the story may be gone, the name's dust, but the feeling that remains, a shadow in the grass, a breath in the stillness, a whisper in the wind, and you keep walking, not because the mystery is over, but because it never truly ends. You wander now, through a quiet courtyard. Its flagstones are worn, uneven with age, edges softened by moss and the memory of footsteps long gone. The wind hushes around you, just enough to rustle the ivy creeping along the low walls. Moonlight spills down like pale milk, catching on worn stone and half-forgotten carvings. Overhead, an owl drifts silently by, and at the far end of the courtyard stands something strange, a structure that doesn't feel fully present, not because it doesn't belong, but because it only half exists in the now. You're standing at the threshold of one of England's strangest medieval mysteries. This is the tale of the Green Children of Woolpit. The village of Woolpit sits quietly in the Suffolk countryside, surrounded by gentle hills, hedgerows that hum with old stories. Today it's peaceful, pleasant, cottages, wildflowers, winding lanes. But in the 12th century, something happened here, something no one has ever fully explained. Here's what was written. 2 children appeared, not from another village, not with a caravan. They were just found near a deep pit once used to trap wolves. That's how the village got its name, Woolpit. Wolf Pit. They were siblings, a boy and a girl, and they were green. Not sickly green, not bruised, not pale, but vibrant, like fresh spring leaves. That was the first thing anyone noticed. They didn't speak English, or any known language. Their clothing was unfamiliar, strangely cut, made of materials no one recognized. They were terrified, holding each other, crying, as if the world around them made no sense. The villagers didn't know what to do, so they fed them. But the children refused everything, until someone gave them raw beans. They devoured them, hungrily. That became their food of choice. For days, time passed. Slowly they began to adapt. But the boy didn't survive. He grew weak and died within weeks. The girl lived. Her green skin faded. She learned English, slowly, and then she told a story no one forgot. She said they came from a place called St. Martin's Land, a world of twilight, where the sun never rose, where everything was shadowed and green. Their people looked like them, green, quiet. They had been tending cattle with their father when they heard a sound, a strange sound, like church bells, and suddenly they were pulled through and found themselves here, in a world too loud, too bright, ours. That's the story, written not in poems, not whispered in folklore, but in records. 2 separate chronicles, one by William of Newburgh, another by Ralph of Coggeshall. 2 monks, independent, credible. Neither knew of the other, but both wrote it down as fact. Over the centuries, scholars tried to explain it. Some said the children were Flemish refugees, that they spoke a foreign dialect, that their clothes were simply different, and the green malnutrition, a condition called chlorosis, a sickness that turns the skin a greenish hue. With recovery, the color fades. It fits, mostly, but not completely. There's no record of a refugee group describing a sunless land, or hearing bells that pulled them through a cave, and no one, not even in a diverse region, recognized the language they spoke. In the 20th century, a folklorist named Ethel Rudkin proposed something bolder. She said the children came from underground, literally, a hollow earth, a network of hidden realms beneath Britain, long forgotten. Sometimes those realms cross into ours, just for a moment. Unbelievable. Yes, but still, how do you explain the green? The fear, the way sunlight hurt their eyes, and the memory of a place with no sun. Eventually the girl fully integrated. She was baptized, given the name Agnes. She married, lived a normal life, even had children. But some say she never truly forgot. In one version of the story, she didn't say St. Martin's Land was beneath us. She said it was just beyond the veil, a realm that grazes ours, touches it. Sometimes, through places, like the Wolf Pit. That detail, it lingers, because if it's true, they didn't wander into our world. They fell into it, or were pulled through a doorway that closed and never opened again. Medieval minds were full of borderlands, fairy rings, stone circles, hollow hills where time moved differently. But this tale was written by monks, and it has never truly been erased. Today, Woolpit still remembers. The village sign shows the green children, 2 small figures etched in wood. The pit itself was filled in centuries ago. but the land remembers. Some locals still leave offerings near the woods. Coins, bits of cloth, quiet tokens. Not out of belief, but because it feels right, just in case. You picture them now, two small children, alone, blinking against the light, holding hands, the boy fading, the girl surviving, adapting, remembering. And you wonder how many other doors exist, how many children, or travelers, have crossed into places where they didn't belong. How many were never found? How many were never believed? It's easy to dismiss it all. Malnutrition, trauma, mistaken language, but not everything fits in a neat box. Some stories drift at the edges, like fog, waiting for quiet minds to notice, waiting for wonder. And sometimes, when you walk alone through hedgerows and hollow fields, you hear something. Not a bell, not a voice, just the briefest ripple in the quiet, like something brushing against the world. From the other side, keep surfacing. Now, you step into a different kind of silence, the kind that clings low to the ground, that curls around your ankles like cold river mist. It doesn't drift, it doesn't hum, it just waits. There's no wind here, no rustling leaves, only the soft lapping of distant water against worn stone. Somewhere beyond your lantern's reach, an owl calls, slow, hoarse, off-key. Not quite owl, not quite right. You are deep in Brittany now, walking along the salt-bitten coast of northwestern France. Here, stories rise from the sea like steam, curling into forests, clinging to crumbling ruins. And just beyond the hush of trees, just behind the weight of centuries, lies one of the strangest tales ever told. This is the story of La Bible du Diable de Bretagne, the Devil's Bible of Brittany. Not the famous Codex Gigas, not the one with the full-page demon and blackened pages. This is something else, stranger, rarer, and possibly something that never existed at all. Or worse, something that did, but was erased from every shelf, every archive, every memory that once dared hold it. The name was never written, only whispered. La Bible du Diable, said to have been written by a monk who did not age, inside a monastery that no longer appears on any map, buried somewhere within the enchanted forest of Brocéliande. Yes, that Brocéliande, where Merlin sleeps, where time bends, where stones move and legends refuse to die. The story begins in the 13th century. A Breton nobleman, his name long lost, was traveling through the region, hunting, or maybe fleeing. He stumbled across a monastery hidden beneath trees that moved, even when there was no wind. The monks welcomed him in, silent men, robes dark as wine, eyes reflective, catching torchlight in strange glassy ways. Inside they offered him warmth, food, shelter, and a glimpse of something not meant to be seen. They showed him a book, bound in black leather, cold and slick, like river stones. Its pages shimmered, not with gold, but with something darker, like crushed obsidian or polished coal. The writing unrecognizable, glyphs that shifted when tilted toward firelight, diagrams of creatures with too many limbs, maps of cities that never existed, eyes that seemed to stare back. The nobleman fled, shaken. He returned days later with scholars, but the monastery was gone. No monks, no walls, just trees and silence. Some say he searched for the rest of his life. He never found it again. Was it a dream of fever, an illusion brought on by spoiled wine or war maybe? But here's where it twists. In 1842, a Catholic bishop traveling near Rennes-le-Château reportedly discovered fragments of a strange manuscript, buried beneath the floor of an abandoned chapel. The text written in a language no scholar could place, bound in dark leather so soft it felt almost alive. He sent the manuscript to Paris for study, but it never arrived. The courier vanished. His horse was found days later, tethered to a tree, calm, unharmed, but the saddlebags empty. No blood, no struggle, just absence. Church records confirm. In the 19th century, there were quiet investigations in Brittany into forbidden texts, heretical ideas, but this manuscript never mentioned, not once, just a blank space where something should be. Now here's your curious detail. Some say the book was alive, not breathing, not bleeding, but changing. that its pages rewrote themselves when left in darkness, that the writing shifted depending on who opened it. One monk, Etienne de Grandval, wrote a single line in his journal, a book that watches you read. The next page blank. A week later, he was found dead, sitting upright in his cell, eyes open, mouth filled with ash. Coincidence perhaps, but the pattern, now imagine it, a book, thick and cold, tied shut with cords that untie themselves when no one is watching, resting on a stone pedestal, beneath the forest's roots, waiting, not for everyone, just for the curious, or the desperate. Of course skeptics laugh, they call it a hoax, a pagan fable, a monastic prank that spiraled into myth. But then, pieces of the language have surfaced, carved onto ancient altars, etched into Bible margins, molded into cathedral bells. No translation, no origin, no explanation. A language no one ever spoke aloud, and yet it echoes. So what was the Devil's Bible of Brittany? A forbidden gospel, a Catholic text, a cosmic trick. Some say it told the other truth, not the one taught in cathedrals, but the one whispered by the void itself. That the universe wasn't born of light, but of something older, something darker, and that truth was written down, then buried, then erased. Every time someone tried to find it, something went wrong. In 1981, a historian named Marie Leclerc compiled 200 pages tracing references to the book. Then her publisher folded, her home flooded, her research gone. She never published again. Coincidence maybe, but the pattern persists. Even now, as you walk along the edge of Brocélion's woods, your steps crunch softly through damp leaves. You glance behind you. The trees are thicker now, the air is slower. You pass a collapsed stone well. Some say that's where the monk disappeared, with the book in hand. Others say it wasn't the monk who vanished, it was the book that emerged. You keep walking, heart steady, but pace quicker, because some stories don't want to be solved. Some books don't want to be read, and some names like La Bible du Diable are meant to be whispered, half remembered, half erased, left beneath dust and decay. Because if the devil ever truly had a Bible, and if that Bible held the kind of truths we were never meant to see, then maybe, just maybe, forgetting it was the greatest mercy we were ever given. You're deep in the countryside now, somewhere foggy, uneven, and stubbornly unchanged. The road behind you barely more than a trail, swallowed by hedgerows and slow-growing trees. The air is thick with dew. The scent of wet earth and iron fills your lungs. The grass glistens, brushing against your legs, and the trees, they lean toward one another, as if whispering secrets you were never meant to hear. There's something heavy in the silence here, not oppressive, but aware. Ahead, a narrow stone path curls forward, toward a cluster of buildings, thatched roofs sagging under their own age, wattle and daub walls, crumbling softly back into the soil, moss blankets everything, and somewhere beneath your boots, a story waits, not forgotten, not remembered, just paused. Welcome to the village that never was, or rather the village that once was, and then wasn't. This is the mystery of Warren Percy, perhaps the most famous of England's deserted medieval villages. You can still find the name on old maps from the 13th and 14th centuries, nestled in the rolling hills of the Yorkshire Wolds. Once it was a thriving community, a manor house, over 30 homes, livestock, and a church whose broken bell tower still claws at the sky like memory that refuses to die. But by the early 1500s, the village was gone. Not slowly diminished, not burned, gone, abandoned, forgotten, and then erased. You walk now among the remnants, grass-covered foundations, stone walls barely knee-high, a ruined chapel, its bones, still stubborn against the centuries. Archaeologists have catalogued it all, 30-some homes, narrow tracks, tools left behind, pots broken mid-use, and then they found the bodies, hundreds of them, not in neat rows, not buried with care, but hastily, some burned, some decapitated, some dismembered. No gravestones, no ceremony, just scattered remains beneath collapsed rooftops. And the dates not Viking era, not Norman. These deaths came later, post-Black Death, pre-enclosure, between the Great Plagues and England's land grab for sheep farming. Two forces that erased dozens of villages. But War and Percy doesn't quite fit the pattern. No signs of forced removal, no war, no royal orders, no record at all, just silence. Like a place that didn't die, but folded, inward. Now here's what history says. Yes, many villages were lost in the 14th and 15th centuries. Populations declined, lords enclosed land, peasants were pushed out. But War and Percy leaves a different trace. In 2017, researchers published a report. Disturbing. Many skeletons from the site showed signs of post-mortem defleshing, meat stripped from bone. Some bore deep cut marks. Some had human teeth marks. Not wolves, not rats, people. Theories vary. Starvation, desperation, madness. But some suggest ritual, a fear reaction, a defense. A few experts offer this chilling thought. The villagers mutilated their dead to keep them from rising. Yes, zombie prevention measures. That's what the paper said. It sounds absurd. Until you remember medieval Europe was steeped in revenant lore. Stories of the dead that rose in the night. Not as ghosts, but as flesh. Shuffling, hungry, contagious. There are written accounts from the 12th and 13th centuries of whole villages plagued by walking corpses. Priests instructed people to sever heads, to burn bodies, to stake them to the earth. And here in War and Percy, you find scorched bones, crushed skulls, limbs cut, not for burial but to stop something. So, what were they afraid of? A sickness, a person, a presence, or just fear itself? You pause now by what was once the village's main path. Stones dulled by time barely break the soil. The wind brushes the leaves. And for just a second, it sounds like breathing. Low, tired, close. Imagine being here when it happened. Doors locked, families whispering, fires dying, something scratching. At the edge of reason. Maybe they waited for morning. Maybe. Morning didn't help. And here's a detail most people don't know. In the 1700s, long after the village had vanished from maps, settlers tried to move in. They built houses, planted fields. All of them left within a year. No one knows why. Some blame the soil, others the water. But local whispers say different. They say animals refused to enter the village. That compasses wavered near the church tower. That if you press your ear to the earth, you can hear it hum. A hum like breath, a hum like memory. One hiker, in the 1990s, wrote in his journal that he heard flute music drifting from the ruins at twilight. No wind, no birds, no one around. He followed the sound, deeper into the ruins. The music stopped at the church. He said he never walked alone again. So maybe War and Percy wasn't just a village. Maybe it was a place that remembered too well. A place where fear outlived its people. You reach the edge now, the final stretch. Past gravestones, their names faded under moss. Your boots are soft in the grass, but still you feel it. That prickling sense that something is watching. And the strangest part, War and Percy isn't alone. Across England, there are other names, other places that once existed, and then didn't. No ruins, no trails, just names on parchment, whispers and folklore, gone. Some say the people fled, some say the land swallowed them. But what if they never left? What if they stayed and changed? Now, the landscape shifts again beneath your feet, this time toward the jagged sea-lashed cliffs of the Outer Hebrides. The air sharpens, colder now, salted with spray and something metallic, like rusted chains or old blood. Each gust of wind slices through your coat, carrying the taste of cold iron and grief that doesn't belong to you. In the distance, perched like a sentinel at the edge of the known world, a lighthouse blinks. One beat of light, pause, another, like a tired eye, refusing to close. You walk toward it, boots crunching over slick stone, patches of flattened moss, salt-furred rock. This is Island Moor, the largest of the Flannan Isles, a desolate sea-battered shard of land rising abruptly from the North Atlantic. Uninhabited, unyielding, unforgiving. And you're about to step into one of the most haunting maritime mysteries ever recorded. The Flannan Isles lighthouse disappearance. The facts simple, the story anything but. December 1900, 3 lighthouse keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, Donald MacArthur, vanished without a trace. A relief crew, arriving after a violent storm, found the island silent, too silent. The lighthouse was dark, the main door unlocked, Inside, meals sat untouched on the kitchen table, cold as the stone walls. One chair knocked over, 2 oilskins gone, but the third still hanging on its hook. No bodies, no blood, no sign of struggle. Just 3 men gone. It's a modern tale, yes, but its roots dig deep into older ground. Superstition, sea curses, and the ancient tension between men and wild places. Long before the lighthouse was built in 1899, Island Moor was feared. Early Christian monks called it the Island of the Dead. No animals lived here. Birds avoided flying over it. Even fishermen kept their distance. Still, the island was needed. The waters were dangerous. Ships broke apart in sudden squalls. Waves rose from nowhere. So the lighthouse was built, modern, defiant, practical. Steel and glass, on a place made of myth and fear. And almost immediately, the whispers began. The lighthouse logs from 1900 seemed routine at first glance. But between the lines, something unsettling. One entry reads sea that never rose, yet lashed the tower. Another, the wind is howling, but the air is still. Reports mention unnatural swells, waves crashing from calm water, and then an unverified entry. A now missing logbook, said to have been written just days before the men vanished. It mentions a stranger standing on the rocks, but no ships were sighted, no landings recorded. Who was he? And if he was real, why didn't they report it? That same entry, supposedly in MacArthur's hand, includes more. He writes that he cannot sleep, that one of the others cries in his bunk at night, that the wind sounds like it's saying his name, and then nothing. Silence. The official investigation blamed the sea, a storm, men trying to secure equipment on the western landing. But the explanation never settled. All 3 men gone at once. Impossible. Protocol forbade it. One man must always remain inside. Always. And MacArthur, the strongest of them, left without his coat. An experienced islander would never step into a gale, unprotected. And the logbook missing. No storm debris, no damage inside, no flooding, no answers. Here's your eerie detail. A crew member, Joseph Moore, said that every clock inside the lighthouse had stopped. Not broken, not removed, just stopped. Another sailor later wrote that the silence on the island felt unholy, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Theories flooded in. A rogue wave possible, but why no damage? Violence among the men unlikely. They were stable, reliable. Then, the fringe theories. Something from the sea. A voice. A call only they could hear. Or worse, that the island itself reclaimed them. Some suggest Island Moor was once a sacred Pictish site. A place never meant to be disturbed. A peak of something ancient submerged and sleeping. And maybe still watching. You sit now inside what remains of the lighthouse keeper's quarters. The walls are damp, the air thick with salt and stillness. You imagine the moment. 3 men, weeks into isolation. One hears something, opens the door. The others follow. Maybe they saw a figure. Maybe they heard singing. Or maybe they stepped into a moment that didn't belong to our world. The table now sits bare, but once it held warm meals. A chair leans back as if someone stood too fast. The shadows here linger longer than they should. Outside, the sea moans against the cliffs. You rise. The wind wraps around you, sighing through cracks in the tower. It almost sounds like words, like a voice you nearly understand. There is no grave for the men. Only a plaque, 3 names, 3 roles, 3 absences. Locals still avoid the island. Some say it hums, others say birds never land. A few whisper that when the wind dies, you can hear footsteps on the rocks. Footsteps that always stop when you turn around. Maybe it was the sea, maybe madness, but maybe, just maybe, those 3 men stepped into a thin place, a fold in the world's fabric, and the island, ancient as sorrow, simply kept them, because some places don't like to be lit. Some places prefer their shadows. And Island Moor, despite the lighthouse still blinking through fog and memory, remains one of them. You leave the sea behind now, though the scent of salt still clings to your sleeves, like a ghost that refuses to let go. The wind shifts, gentler now, drawing you inland, into the dense, tangled forests of Central Europe. The earth is damp, the trees tall and huddled close, as if whispering secrets you're not yet ready to hear. Fog curls low across the ground, winding through branches and underbrush like something alive. There's a hush here, Even the birds hold their breath. Every sound feels muffled, contained. You walk slowly, boots darkened with dew and fallen leaves until the trees thin, and you reach the edge of an old clearing. In its center, a circle of stones, half sunken into the moss, broken at the edges, but still eerily symmetrical. As you step closer, the silence deepens. It doesn't feel empty. It feels waiting. This is where the world feels thinner. And here is where the old story begins. The mystery of the dancing plague. Yes, that one. The medieval event where hundreds of people danced uncontrollably. Some until their very deaths. Strasbourg, 1518. A city of cobbled streets, steepled churches, sweltering beneath the weight of a blistering summer. One morning, a woman named Frau Trofea steps into the street and begins to dance. No music, no partner, no ceremony, just movement, rhythmic, unceasing. She doesn't stop, not after minutes, not after hours. She dances well into the night, and the next day, and the next, and then others begin to join her. By the end of a week, more than 30 people are caught in the same strange trance. By the end of the month, nearly 400. They aren't laughing, they aren't celebrating. Their faces are twisted in pain, in exhaustion. Some cry out between spasms, others sob openly. But still, they dance, feet bruised and torn, muscles seizing, eyes vacant, and then they begin to fall. Some collapse from sheer exhaustion. Others suffer strokes, heart attacks, blood loss. Contemporary accounts claim at least 15 people died, possibly more. And this wasn't the only time. There were other outbreaks. Aachen, 1374. Similar. But Strasbourg was the most dramatic, the best recorded. You try to picture it now. The sun beating down on the stone courtyard. Dozens, then hundreds of bodies, swaying, convulsing, spinning in rhythm. Rhythm that no one could hear. Theories have tried to explain it. Ergot poisoning, a mold on rye bread that causes hallucinations. LSD-like symptoms, twitching, seizures, delusions. It fits, sort of, but not entirely. Ergot doesn't cause coordinated movement, doesn't explain why dancers moved in sync, why only some people were affected, why others in the same household remained still. So the theories get stranger. Mass hysteria, a psychological contagion, fear made physical, anxiety turned kinetic, but even that feels incomplete, because the dancing didn't look like seizures, it looked like ritual, like trance. Now here's where belief seeps in. The region had long been steeped in St. Vitus worship, a martyr believed to protect people from madness, from chorea, uncontrolled movement. If you prayed to him, he might stop the spasms, but if you angered him, he might curse you, to dance forever. And in 1518, people were desperate. Famine, floods, plague. The church was demanding more tithes. God felt distant, so maybe they believed they were cursed. And maybe that belief was enough. Imagine it. Children clinging to their mothers, merchants shuttering their stalls, priests arriving with incense, and in the middle a marketplace trembling with motion. No music, no celebration, only suffering. Officials hired musicians. They thought, let them dance it out, exercise it. So drums played, flutes sang, but the rhythm only fed the plague. Faster, harder, until it looked less like therapy and more like sacrifice. Eventually, they quarantined the dancers, moved them to the edge of town. Even seeing the dancing they feared could spread it. And maybe it could, because the mind is fragile, and rhythm is contagious. After nearly 2 months, the dancers were taken to a mountain shrine of St. Vitus. They wore red shoes, sprinkled holy water on their feet, prayed. Some made it, some didn't. But then, just like that, the dancing stopped. It never returned. And Frau Trofea, no one knows. The records don't say. She stepped onto history's stage, spun herself into legend, then vanished. Today the square in Strasbourg is quiet. Its name changed, its history buried. But if you stand there, still, very still, some say you can feel a pulse, faint, just beneath the stones, as if the beat never really ended, as if belief still lingers, waiting for someone to take the first step. So, you don't hum, you don't tap your foot, just in case. The forest thins behind you now, and in its place, open fields unfold, quiet, wide, under a pale afternoon sky. Mist hugs the low grass like a blanket, wrapping the earth in a breathless stillness. Your steps grow softer. The soil beneath your feet turns springy, as though the land itself is holding something close, something it isn't ready to release. There's no wind here, only a dense hush in the air. Not eerie exactly, but heavy, weighted, with memory. And then ahead, you see them. Rows of low, lichen-covered stone mounds, some sunken, some crumbling, half swallowed by time. Some are barely visible, just soft rises in the grass, but others still form faint outlines. Silent shapes pressing through the earth, like an echo refusing to fade. You've arrived at Woolpit, a quiet English village in Suffolk. The name itself is older than most roads, derived from the deep wolf-trapping pits that once lined this region's edges, dug by hand, camouflaged by brush, to capture predators of both livestock and legend. But it's not the wolves that brought you here, it's the Green Children. 12th century, a time of superstition and siege, of plagues and prayers and daily miracles. It begins, as so many strange stories do, on an ordinary day, a harvest day. The villagers of Woolpit are out in the fields, gathering crops beneath a dull, weightless sun, baskets half full, warm wind on the skin, and then near the lip of an old pit, two children appear, a boy and a girl, young, perhaps 5 and 7, maybe a little older, but they are different. Their clothes are wrong, woven from unfamiliar fibers, in a style no one recognizes. Their speech unintelligible, not English, not Latin, just soft syllables in a foreign tongue, and their skin green, not pale, not tinted, but unmistakably, inexplicably green. You kneel now beside the mound where that pit might once have been, its shape blurred by centuries, but in your mind the moment is vivid, gasps breaking the stillness, farmers frozen mid-step, children clutching one another, two small strangers, thin, wide-eyed, blinking in the light, not running, not crying, just lost. Here's the historical truth. This account wasn't invented centuries later. It appears in two respected medieval chronicles, one by Ralph of Coggeshall, the other by William of Newburgh. Both men were monastic historians, known for careful observation, not flights of fantasy, and both described the event with sober awe. They mentioned the children's arrival, their green hue, their refusal of food until someone offered raw beans, still in their pods. Only then did they eat, hungrily. Over time, the green faded, drained slowly from their skin as they adjusted to normal food, but not everything was healed. The boy, the younger of the two, grew ill and died. His name was never recorded, but the girl lived, and eventually, she learned to speak English, and what she said was stranger than anyone expected. She claimed that she and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land, a twilight country, where the sun never shone, where the world was bathed in an eternal dusky glow. Everything was dim there, she said, cool, green. The people looked like them, dressed like them, ate like them. She said they were tending their father's flocks near a deep tunnel or cave when they heard bells, high, distant, like church bells, drifting on the wind. They followed the sound, entered the darkness, and when they emerged, they were here, in Woolpit. Now here's a curious thing. In the Middle Ages, tales of underground realms were surprisingly common. People spoke of inner kingdoms, fairy courts beneath hills, lost cities lit by glowing stones. So her story, though bizarre, was not dismissed. In fact, some believed her. Others sought earthly explanations. One theory, the children were Flemish refugees, survivors of a massacre in nearby Fornham. The region had seen brutal conflicts. Displaced families wandered the land. Perhaps the children fled through a mine shaft, got lost, surfaced in Woolpit. their strange clothes Flemish, their odd speech a dialect, their green skin maybe chlorosis, an iron deficiency seen in malnourished children. It fits, mostly, but even then, the girl never changed her story. Even as she grew, even as she worked in the house of Sir Richard de Calne who took her in, she never stopped speaking of St. Martin's Land, the river of light, the bells, the skyless world. She once called home, and perhaps the strangest detail of all, she said her homeland lay just beyond a great river of light, that the bells pulled them toward the brightness, and when they emerged, they were half blind. In a world too loud, too full of sun, you lie back now, in the grass, watching light fade beyond the tree line, mist curling once again low across the fields, and you think, maybe it's simple. Maybe she was confused, a frightened child, blending memory and myth, just trying to make sense of trauma, or maybe not. Maybe there really was a St. Martin's Land, a world not buried beneath our feet but pressed beside our own, like 2 pages in a closed book, a place reachable only by accident, by invitation, or by mistake, a place that blinked into Woolpit once, just once, and left behind a story. You rise, brush dew from your sleeves, and glance across the silent field. No children there now, no wolves, no open pits, just the soft rise and fall of the earth, breathing beneath a soft English sky. But the story remains, passed down in whispers, in folklore, studied, doubted, retold. One girl whose name history forgot grew up here, far from the land of twilight, who once claimed she had crossed a river of light, who may have seen something we cannot explain, who may have been something we were never meant to understand. As one medieval monk once wrote, the world is wider and stranger than the cloister's walls. And for a brief moment, in Woolpit's history, that strangeness broke through. Section 14, you leave Woolpit behind. Its silence lingers, like smoke on your coat. The road ahead narrows, hedged by ancient hawthorn and wild rose. Above you the sky deepens to indigo, stars scattered like frost. A soft breeze stirs the fields, tugs gently at your sleeves, and somewhere behind the hedgerow, a lone church bell chimes once, then nothing. Your path winds into darkness, toward the edge of another mystery. This one older, stranger, not quite medieval in origin, but so haunting, so enduring, that it captivated medieval minds for centuries. The vanishing army of Cambyses II. The name might not ring loud in modern ears, but in the scrolls of ancient historians and the whispers of desert tribes, it echoes, like thunder over shifting sands. The time, roughly 524 BCE, the place ancient Persia, near the Egyptian frontier. King Cambyses II, son of Cyrus the Great, had taken the throne of the Persian Empire. His ambition vast, he had already conquered Egypt, toppled Pharaoh Psamtik III, but one loose end remained. The Oracle of Amun, at Siwa Oasis, a sacred site that refused to recognize his rule. In fury, Cambyses sent an army, not a scouting party, an army. 50,000 men, soldiers, engineers, servants, camels, wagons, archers, water skins, food stores, all sent into the western desert. Their mission: destroy the temple, humble the oracle, prove Persian dominance. They were never seen again. Gone, every single one. You pause now at a gravel path. Tall grass brushes your knees, silvered with dew. But in your mind, you see the desert, endless dunes, glowing gold beneath a brutal sun. A line of men marching for miles, shields on backs, eyes narrowed against the glare, the shimmer of sand blinding, unforgiving. And then, nothing. No bodies, no bones, not a single shield, not a buckle, not a scrap of cloth. Gone. Mainstream historians have puzzled over this for centuries. Our earliest account, Herodotus, the famed Greek historian, writing 100 years later, he tells us the army marched from Thebes, 7 days to the Karga oasis, then onward towards Siwa. And that's when the sky turned. According to Herodotus, a sandstorm rose, not a breeze, not a dust cloud, a wall. A massive wall of wind and sand, so sudden, so violent. It swallowed the army whole. No time to react. Tents, camels, men buried alive under mountains of moving dunes. A natural tomb. Now Herodotus is known to embellish. But this story stuck, not just in classical text, but through the Islamic Golden Age, through the medieval world. To many, it became a warning about pride, about punishment, about defying the sacred. Here's a curious detail. Explorers have hunted for this army for centuries. Napoleon's men, Victorian adventurers, modern archaeologists, even satellite surveys. And yet, no confirmed discovery. There are rumors, scattered bones, a bronze arrowhead here, a broken dagger there. In 2009, two Italian researchers, Angelo and Alfredo Castiglione, announced a bold claim. They found weapon fragments, skeletal remains, an ancient encampment west of Siwa. They said it matched Persian military gear, showed signs of extreme heat and sand damage, but Egyptian authorities pushed back. The area had seen centuries of tribal conflict, the evidence inconclusive. So, the army remains missing. Some scholars now wonder, did the march even happen? Maybe Herodotus misunderstood. Maybe the story grew in the retelling. Or perhaps the army did march, but never made it to Siwa. Maybe they died of thirst, scattered in small groups, too far apart to leave a grave behind. But medieval minds they didn't doubt. When Herodotus's work was rediscovered, the tale transformed. This wasn't just a military failure. This was divine retribution. The oracle had been defied, a prophecy ignored, and the desert, a realm of jinn and ancient gods, took them. In some versions, the army did reach Siwa, and what they found wasn't human. The temple cursed them, or they heard something they could not unhear, something that lured them deeper, farther, until they vanished. You kneel now, hand pressed to the earth. It's cool, damp with dew, but in the desert, that wouldn't be true. The sands there are dry, shifting, alive. They change shape with every wind. Even today, with drones, maps, and tech, you can get lost. So really, what would it take to erase 50,000 men? Maybe not much at all. There's an old Arabic saying, he who walks too far into the desert finds only himself, or something worse. Local Bedouins whisper still, of lands where no birds fly, of sands that sing at night, a low moan like marching feet. Some say their army still walks, beneath the dunes, their armor shifting, groaning softly with the wind. Others claim to see phantom fires, small flickers in the night, too regular, too still, as if camps are still being lit, again and again. Maybe it was a storm, maybe madness, or mutiny, or misdirection, or maybe they reached something they shouldn't have. The oracle had warned Cambyses. His conquest would stretch too far. His gods would not follow into the sands. But he didn't listen. And perhaps the desert listened instead. You rise. The sky is clear now. The moon hangs high. It spills silver across the path. But the ground beneath you, it feels looser, as if the past is never as buried as we think. One last glance behind you, toward where the desert might be, 1,000 miles away. But somehow you feel it. Whatever swallowed that army. Sandstorm, silence. Or story. It has never given them back, and perhaps it never will. Section 15. You leave the desert behind now, brushing sand from your sleeves. Each grain a memory of something buried. The night air grows cooler. With every step, the path beneath your feet begins to shift. Stone gives way to moss, then to wood. You're crossing an old bridge now, slick with dew and time. And on the far side waits a forest, cloaked in mist. It rises from the ground slowly, like breath from a sleeping giant. The hush here is different, not empty, not silent, but thick, as if the trees themselves are listening. And ahead lies one of the most bizarre, most haunting riddles in all of medieval Europe. Not a tale of war, not politics, but the body, of motion, of something ancient, breaking into the present without warning, the dancing plague of 1518. Yes, really, people danced, themselves, to death. It begins in July in Strasbourg, a busy city back then, part of the Holy Roman Empire. Now, modern-day France. Picture it. Cobbled streets, baking under a merciless sun. Timber-framed houses leaning inward like gossiping neighbors. Markets thick with scent, old cheese, fresh bread, sweat, and heat. The air heavy, with fatigue, with hunger, with tension. And then, on a morning like any other, a woman named Frau Trofea steps into the street and begins to dance. Not gracefully, not with joy, but frantic, wild. Her limbs move as if pulled by invisible strings. Her arms flail, her feet slam the ground. She spins, jerks, collapses, and rises again. No music, no partner, no reason, just movement. Neighbors call to her. They try to calm her, but she just keeps dancing. Hours pass, then days, and within a week more than 30 people join her. By the end of the month, over 400. Men, women, even children. They dance in the streets, in alleys, on bridges, in church courtyards. Some moan as they move, others cry, or whisper, or mutter nonsense. They collapse from exhaustion. But when they wake, they return to the rhythm, and then some begin to die. Not slowly, not metaphorically, literally, from exhaustion, from heart failure, from sheer collapse. Their bodies could no longer endure. Here's what we know. This event is real. The Strasbourg dancing plague is documented in multiple sources. Town records, medical treatises, even church logs. They all describe it, in chilling detail. But what's more disturbing is what came next. No one knew what to do. The city was desperate, so they built a stage, hired musicians, played drums and pipes day and night, hoping the dancers might sweat it out, purge the plague like a fever. But instead, the music fed the frenzy. The beat gave rhythm to the madness. Eventually, the dancers were taken, some carried, some dragged, to a shrine on a nearby mountain, to Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers, epileptics, and the afflicted. There they were brought to the altar, touched relics, prayed, wept, and the dancing stopped, but the mystery remained. What happened? Why did they dance? Why couldn't they stop? Some historians say it was mass hysteria, a psychological storm born of famine, disease, political chaos, that in their suffering something snapped. Others suggest ergot poisoning, a mold that grows on damp rye. It can trigger spasms, hallucinations, convulsions, but ergot doesn't explain everything. Why Strasbourg? Why only dance? Why rhythm? Why no fever? No madness? Only motion? And then, there's the strange idea that this wasn't illness or panic, but memory, ancestral, ancient, ritual, that buried beneath the Christian city were echoes of older rites, pagan dances, sacred trances, long forbidden, never forgotten. And maybe in 1518, they broke through. You pause now, deep in the woods, under trees so old their bark curls like scrolls. There's no wind, no birdsong, but if you listen, you might hear it. Not melody, but rhythm. A pulse, low, steady, waiting, because this wasn't the only time. There were outbreaks before, in the 1300s, in the 1400s, always here. This region, this soil, always the same. Bodies dancing, eyes vacant, feet bleeding, always ending in death. They called it choreomania. One monk wrote, they danced with open mouths and hollow eyes. Not even holy words could stop their feet. Modern science offers theories. Conversion disorder, mass psychogenic illness. They speak of trauma that spills into the flesh, but none of those answers feel complete. None explain why music made it worse, why strangers joined in, why the dance looked like pain, given form. You walk now slower. The trail narrows. Trees arch overhead like ribs. The forest exhales and your skin prickles. You see it again. In your mind. Cobbled streets. Crowd swaying. Eyes glazed. Arms jerking. Feet cracking open against stone. A dance you can't leave. A rhythm that consumes. You take a breath. Steady your step. And keep walking. Toward the light. Because in the quiet places, in cities, deserts and woods, some mysteries still move. Not with answers, but with echoes, waiting to wake. When the rhythm returns, the forest thins. You step through a final curtain of mist and emerge into the open night. The sky above vast, tender, stars scattered like ash across dark velvet. The moon hangs low on the horizon, round, solemn, and beneath it unfolds a quiet hilltop, bare, windswept, almost forgotten. Here only a crumbling stone wall remains, a handful of old, lichen-covered rocks, and the lingering hush of something that refuses quietly, stubbornly to be forgotten. This is where it ends. Our final stop, the last of the 11 medieval mysteries, and perhaps the most haunting of them all, the vanishing village of Warren Percy. You walk slowly now, as though your footfalls might disturb the long-held silence. The air is thin here, touched by something older than memory. No birds, no wind, just the hush of centuries. Warren Percy lies, or rather once lay, in the rolling Yorkshire wolds of England, a place that once thrived, a village occupied for more than 600 years, from the 800s all the way into the 1500s, and then, sometime in the 16th century, it simply ceased. It vanished. Its story began like many others, a Saxon settlement, humble, rugged, real, and slowly it grew. By the 12th century, it had a sturdy church, fields under rotation, small farms, cottages filled with life. That church still stands today, half collapsed, its broken walls gazing down the valley like a watchful sentinel, silent, steady, waiting. And then, people started to leave, one by one, household by household, not all at once, but gradually, quietly, as if some unspoken agreement had taken hold, until by the late 1500s, no one remained. There was no fire, no plague, no army, no rebellion, no exile, just absence, quiet, abandonment. Mainstream historians have studied Warren Percy for decades. It's one of the most thoroughly excavated deserted villages in all of Europe. They found pottery shards, animal bones, clay ovens, hearthstones, even personal markings etched into wood and slate, tiny notes, names, hopes. But the deeper question, the why, remains. You pass what's left of a cottage wall, nothing more than a row of moss-covered stones. But once it was a home. Picture it, a crackling fire, a child pressing her hands to the warmth, the smell of bread baking, laughter, sleep, life, and now just silence and soil. Some blame the Black Death. Yes, England was ravaged by plague in the 1300s, but Warren Percy, strangely, endured. Records show the village continued for over a century after the worst passed. So what happened? Another theory blames the wool boom of the late 1400s. Sheep became more profitable than tenants. Landowners evicted farmers, turned villages into pastures. It happened everywhere. And maybe Warren Percy was one of those quiet casualties. But even that doesn't explain the way it happened. Because in Warren Percy, it was slow. Buildings weren't destroyed. They were allowed to collapse over time. That church, it was used long after the houses had fallen. People still came, still buried their dead, even after the village had emptied. So maybe it wasn't just economics or disease. Maybe it was something else, something harder to see, harder to name. Here's your eerie footnote. In 2017, archaeologists uncovered a cache in a dry well. At the bottom, the charred and dismembered remains of more than a dozen people, many of them children. The bones showed cutting, burning, wounds that didn't fit any known burial rite. What happened in those final years? Some believe famine led to madness. Others suggest ritual, a belief that if you feared the dead might rise, You had to destroy the body, not metaphorically, truly. Was it fear? Was it protection or punishment? No one knows, and the well remains, cold, quiet, holding its secrets, far beneath your feet. You walk now along the church ruins. The moonlight filters through empty windows, casting long shadows across broken pews and tangled roots. The graveyard beside it still breathes. Old stones lean like tired guardians. Names faded, faces erased. You stop beside one, place your hand on its surface. This was someone's world, and yet we don't know why they left. Why the laughter stopped, why the ovens went cold, why the village faded, like a sigh. Some say they simply chose to go. Maybe they were offered land elsewhere. Maybe they'd had enough. Maybe they walked away from something, or towards something, and no one asked. You pause. Listen. There's no fear here, just something older, softer, sad. Not a ghost story, but a lullaby that no one sings anymore. You ache, not with dread, but with longing, for the sowing by candlelight, the whispering between siblings, the geese chased through morning mist. All gone. This mystery doesn't scream, it whispers, and as the breeze brushes your face, soft as breath you hear it. Not an answer, not a voice, but a presence. A village that didn't die, just went quiet. So, let your shoulders soften, let your breath slow. The mysteries we've walked through tonight, they weren't just puzzles, they were windows into lives once lived, into fears once felt, into a past that still breathes beneath the grass. These weren't just stories, they were echoes. Some were loud, others gentle, but all unfinished, and that's okay. Not every mystery wants to be solved. Not every truth needs to be known. Some stories are meant to be remembered, held in quiet hands, like fireflies. So now rest. You've wandered far tonight, through forest and field, through centuries and silence. You've stood beside dancers and kings, touched the stones of vanished homes, heard the hush of history. Now, return to the warmth of your bed, to the breath of the present, to the soft hum of night. You don't need to solve anything now. Just breathe, just sleep, and carry with you one small thought that somewhere beneath moss and mist and memory, the past is still there, and it's listening. Sweet dreams.